Okay, so today we're going to be talking about emotional spending, and I'm super excited to do this topic because it was actually requested by a listener, and this is one of my first episodes topics that was requested by a listener. So I was really happy to do it, and it was actually something that I kind of had in my mind too that I wanted to talk about at some point. So it's the perfect timing. So emotional spending, if you're not familiar with the term, is pretty much just when you spend money based on feelings you're having in the moment. It can be based on stress, boredom, unhappiness, or even happiness. It's the act of spending money for the purpose of making you feel better or enhancing the feelings you're already having if it's for more like a happiness celebration type purpose. So I'll get into this more in a minute, but it's more about the fact that it's the heightened emotion that's driving you to make the purchase rather than thinking out and making planned purchases. So it's not like that there's anything wrong with making purchases to ease stress or make yourself like enhance like a happiness and you want to do something to celebrate. It's not that there's anything wrong with that. It's more that it's really the emotion that's pretty much fully driving the purpose. There's not really other factors in it, like you didn't plan it out. Maybe you didn't have the money for it. It's just the emotion was there and you went out and did it. So that's kind of like what emotional spending is. So some examples of emotional spending might be like paying for something out of convenience because you're feeling burned out. Like maybe you had taken out food to cook for dinner and instead you're like, you know what, I'm just too burned out, I'm too tired, we're just going to order in dinner tonight. And maybe that food that you had taken out already is going to get wasted now because it needed to be cooked tonight. Like who knows, it can cause things that make you feel bad about the purchase afterwards. Another example is spending money to treat yourself or others. So this could be anything from buying an expensive bottle of wine to getting a spa treatment or booking a getaway. Like I said, this doesn't always have to be based on bad emotions. It could also be based on good emotions. Like for example, spending money to treat yourself and others. I have an example of where I fell into this. I think it was my daughter's either sweet 16 birthday or a graduation. It might have been an 8th grade graduation. I can't remember the exact situation, but she wanted to go to Cheesecake Factory. So we took the whole family to Cheesecake Factory. There's 5 of us. None of my kids are young enough to eat from the kids menu. So it's basically like taking 5 adults to a restaurant. And since it was her birthday or whatever it was, I don't remember if it was her birthday, but regardless, I was like, we really wanted to celebrate. And usually when we go out, which is very infrequent, because it does cost a lot for a family of 5 adults basically to go out to eat, I'm always like, you got to get water. We don't usually get an appetizer. If we do, it's like we share one, and we don't really get dessert. Again, if we do, we'll split one. I'm usually very like mindful about spending when we go out to eat. But for whatever reason, this dinner, I was just like, yeah, everyone get whatever drinks you want. You want appetizers? Yeah, let's get 3. Everyone order whatever they want. Dessert? Sure. I was just like, it's a special occasion. Get whatever you want. And when I got the bill, I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And it just kind of shocked me when I saw like how much money we just spent in such a short amount of time on food. So it can easily happen like that. I just thought that would be a good example to share with the happiness, because a lot of times people think of emotional spending on just the negative side, but it can easily happen either because you're trying to make yourself happier or because you are happy and you want to celebrate even further. So another example of emotional spending is buying something because it's on sale, even if you had no plans to buy it at any time in the near future. There's definitely emotion involved in being tempted by something that's on sale. And we can get that feeling if we don't get it now, that it might not be priced this low again. And the stores are really counting on you having those feelings. But if you really think about it, does it make sense to spend $50 on something that you had no intention of buying just because you're saving $25 off the regular price? If you had no intention on buying the item, you still just spent $50 that you didn't plan on spending. So you didn't save money, you spent money. So, just to kind of recognize those things. Also, I just want to clarify, there's nothing wrong with spending money on things that make you happy. If you can afford it and you're being intentional about how you spend your money, you definitely should use money on things that make you happy. But it's more about like, what is driving your decision, and are you going to regret that decision later? Are you making an impulsive decision based on how you're feeling in this moment? And is that different on how you might feel about it tomorrow when that feeling fades? So there's a big difference between something like planning out a vacation, saving up for it, making sure you can afford it, and feeling really good about it, spending the money on it when you do it because you had planned and you have the money for it. There's a big difference between that and just like deciding on a whim to book an expensive vacation that you have no budget for, just because you were feeling really burned out and you wanted to treat yourself. And then when you get back, you're spending months or longer trying to recoup financially from it after you return. So it's really about like, what's causing you to make that purchase, and is it just pure emotion, or is there emotion and thought and planning and other things behind it? So those are kind of just some examples. There's lots of different examples of emotional spending, but I just wanted to give a few examples just to kind of put in your mind like the types of things we're talking about. So some tips to help you combat emotional spending. One of the best ways, in my opinion, is really to try not to allow yourself to make impulse purchases. So I know that sounds obvious. No one wants to make impulse purchases because that's the problem in and of itself. So it's kind of like, oh, well, I have this problem of making impulse purchases. Well, just don't make impulse purchases. I know it's not that easy to just say that. But if you can really try and get yourself to recognize that you might do that in some instances, and try and just make it a rule that you won't make impulse purchases. So like, if you can give yourself a time limit, like say 24 hours. So say if today you're like, oh, I saw this, I don't know, everyone uses throw pillows as an example, like throw pillows at Target. Like for some reason, that's been a recent example I've been hearing. But say if you see like really cute Valentine's Day throw pillows when you're at Target, and you're just going to grab them and stick them in the cart because you're like, oh, those are so cute. Oh, that would make me so happy. I have to have them. And you're just going to throw them in the cart and buy them. Well, if you make yourself say, okay, those are really cute, I'd like to have those, but make yourself wait a day. Because when you're out of the store and you have like a better frame of mind, you're not in like that moment, where you're like, oh, they're so cute, just throw them in the cart. Maybe the next day you're like, yeah, they were cute, but like, I don't really want to spend like, $20 or $40 if you're buying a couple on pillows right now. I have other things that I'd rather prioritize. So giving yourself that time delay, it doesn't mean you can't buy it. You're just waiting a day and letting the emotion die down, and then saying, okay, I do still really want that. I have the money for it. I'm going to go get it. It's just giving yourself time to step back and think. Another way is to have a budget that allows for some discretionary spending. So when you allow yourself a little bit of free money, you can still treat yourself once in a while, but you're not going to regret it later because you already had money put aside for those purchases. So maybe if you can set aside $5 or $10 a week to just build up a little fund where you can pull from when you want to treat yourself. Even just knowing that you have those little bit of funds aside, and you're going to be able to treat yourself at some point in the future, it can kind of give yourself something to look forward to. And that can help you combat other emotional spending. Another tip is to unsubscribe from promotional emails. If you don't know about the special deals, you won't be tempted by them. Of course, those emails are designed to trigger your emotions and get you to buy things that you had no intention of buying. So if you can unsubscribe from them, especially maybe even the ones for your favorite stores, because those are going to be the ones that you are going to be probably triggered by more easily to go in and start buying things that you really didn't plan on purchasing. Another tip is to delete shopping apps from your phone, or at least move them back to maybe 3-4 screens back where you won't be, where it's not as easy to get to them. So you want to kind of like remove some of those temptations as much as you can, just to make it a few more steps to have to get to them if you really do want to make a purchase. Another tip is don't go shopping just to go shopping. So like this actually is nothing I've ever really done. I've never really been like a shopper where I'm just like, oh, let's just go out to the stores today. It's always, I'm usually always going to get something, but I definitely know some people that is something they really enjoy doing. They just go out to shop for the day and they look around and see things, and maybe they pick something up, maybe they don't. But if you struggle with being tempted by those things in the stores that you weren't going to buy and you don't have the money to buy, just by keeping yourself out of the store to just go shopping can really be helpful. Like, try and see if there's something else you can do to take up that time when you would have gone shopping, or make it a challenge to yourself to go into the store. Like, well, first of all, don't go into the store unless you're going there for a purpose, if this is a challenge for you. And when you do go for something specific that you need to buy, make it a challenge for yourself to leave the store with just that item, because it really can boost your mood. Like if you go to Target to buy, like, I don't know, paper towels, and you leave the store with paper towels, you'll be like, yes, I just bought what I needed. I didn't get tempted by anything else. And it does actually make you feel good. So that's another tip. This tip I actually read on a website, and I thought it was kind of a really cool idea. I haven't actually done it personally, but I thought it would be fun to share. It says to create a 30-day list. So when you feel like you have that urge to buy something, just put it on a list and date when you put it on the list. So maybe, it's, I don't know, maybe you saw new sheets for your bed that you're like, oh, those are really nice. And you put down new sheet set and you put the date. Well, in 30 days from now, and you'll keep adding to that list. Like, every time you see something that you want to buy that's not like an essential, you add it to the list and you date it. So when 30 days have passed, by looking at the date, you can see when you added the item to the list. You look at the list and you decide then, do you still really want it? It's like, okay, new sheets for an example. Well, I don't know, the sheets we have been just fine. I really don't need them right now, and I don't really have the money that I want to dedicate to sheets. I'd rather buy some other thing. And then you can cross it off the list. Or you're like, yeah, I really do need those sheets. I have the money set aside for them and I'm going to go buy them. So it just gives you a totally different perspective and time to think, because many times after 30 days have passed, you're like, I don't really care if I have that. So I thought that was kind of a neat idea to try. Another tip is to just try and identify something else that'll help you feel better that doesn't involve spending money. Maybe going for a walk, playing a game with your family, doing a puzzle, reading, whatever things you might enjoy that don't involve spending money, you can use them to serve the same purpose that emotional spending can give you, like, making you feel better or helping you want to celebrate. Try and think of other alternatives that you can do to help with those feelings that don't involve spending. So, I mean, just to kind of summarize this, it's kind of there's mixed. It's kind of like conflicting. It's because it's like there isn't anything wrong with making emotional purchases, but it's what's driving that purchase. If you are just regretting these purchases you're making because you're just fully going on emotion and making the purchase, then that's where you might want to find these ways to try and help yourself figure out, like, what can you do differently to stop this. But if you are planning for it and you're thinking, this would really make me happy, we're going to put aside this much money. In 4 weeks, we'll have enough money to buy this item. And you buy it and you're like, oh, this is great. And it makes you happy like you thought it would. And, you had the money set aside, which makes you feel even better because you had the money planned for it. It's still an emotional purchase, but it's not the type where you didn't plan for it. You didn't let just that emotion trigger you into buying something that you didn't have the money for and you weren't going to buy. So it's like, I totally understand that there's conflict here, because it almost sounds like you shouldn't buy things to make yourself feel better. You shouldn't buy things that make you happier. And that's not true. It's more just the when it becomes a problem is when it's the emotion only that's driving you to make these purchases, and especially when you don't have the funds for it, and it's not what you want to spend your money on. You're letting yourself get into this mood where you just buy something and then later on you're like, oh no, now I had these financial goals and now I'm not able to meet them because I bought all these other things that I really didn't want to buy, but I just made the whim decision in a moment and wound up buying these things or making these extra plans. So I think the main point is that it's more just really trying to get the emotional spending under control so that you're making clear, thoughtful decisions on how you want to spend the money for those types of purchases. So like for example, if you have money set aside for an expensive dinner to celebrate an anniversary or some other event, of course, that's totally fine. Go and do that. If that's how you're prioritizing your money and that's where you want to spend it, and you know this is coming up and you're like, we're going to do this and it's going to be fun, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're doing that same dinner because you're like, well, yeah, we don't really have the money for it, but we deserve this, let's go out and celebrate, and then you're struggling to buy groceries for the week and you have to put them on a credit card, then that's where it's something that you might want to say, like, is there a better way to control this? Could we maybe buy like a $10 cheese and cracker tray at Target and maybe a couple bottles of soda and have the same celebration at home without going out and spending, over $100 on a meal? When you can intentionally decide not to make a purchase based on one of these triggers, it will make you feel really good, and you'll see that you're having more control over those emotions, those emotional spending triggers. And every time you can do that, it's going to help you strengthen those skills as you go forward. So I hope this was helpful. I really think that it's more about just seeing it and identifying it. That is the first step to really helping you work through these areas and get better and better at controlling how you spend and being more intentional with it. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to reach out to me for any reason, you can reach me at facebook.com/LolaSFrugalLife. You could send me a direct message. I'd love to hear any episode suggestions or feedback, anything you'd like to share. We also have a private listeners group, which is at facebook.com/groups/LolaSFrugalLife. If you'd like to join, I check it every day, so I will admit you to the group as soon as I see your request. Also, don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on if you like this show. And if you'd be kind enough to leave me a review or rating, that would be really much appreciated. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a really awesome day.